Hello everybody and welcome to this crash course 101 of AutoCAD for interior design. In this brief lecture series I'm going to introduce you to how to use the 2D drafting and 3D modeling components of AutoCAD to create the floor plan of design and then create the elevated three-dimensional model of it. So let's get started. First, we create a very basic drawing document, so I can use this template. And we have to set the dimension correctly. We go to the main menu, Drawing Utilities, Units, and change this one to Architectural. I'm going to switch to the drafting and annotation. And this basically provides me now with all the drawing tools that are geared towards doing like the floor plan. Okay, so for this exercise, what I'm going to use is actually base everything onto my own design studio, which I'm sitting inside, which has the proportion of 10 feet by 12 feet. Now, where you start drawing in AutoCAD, actually, to be honest, doesn't really matter. Just the space. And there are two ways how I could create my room. I could create the rectangle, or I could create the different lines. So let me quickly show you, for example, how this would work with the rectangle. So I click on the grid snap. So for example, I start drawing from this point, and you see my mouse, I move to the right, and I see actually the width is being updated. If I mouse up and down, you see then the grayed out numbers being updated. So this actually gives me an idea of what's X and what's Y. So my room is 12 feet wide, which is actually X, tab, and then 10 feet and enter. I can't zoom out more. AutoCAD tells me I already at the max, no problem, simply click top, and there's my room. Okay, so this room has actually exterior walls around here, which are probably 6 inch. So we can create these walls with the offset tool. So you click offset, and then we can type in 6 inches, enter, left mouse button click, and I move my mouse to the outside, not the inside, because I'm going to extrude to the outside. Okay. Now actually, before we really go more into drawing, really best practice in AutoCAD is structure everything you're going to draw. Walls on one layer, furniture on one layer, dimensions on one layer, 3D models on one layer. So you really should make use of layers. So for example, here I can click on the layer property, which opens basically my layer menu. So I can, for example, increase the size. I have 0. And for example, I can create maybe some layers by clicking on the new layer button. So this one, I, for example, call floor plan. This one maybe I call windows plus doors. And this one, for example, I call maybe dimensions. I can give them all some colors. Now a little bit of advice. I see very often people use candy colors. That's kind of straining on your eyes. So try to be nice to your eyes and select more toned down values. So for example, the floor plan, maybe for the high contrast, I keep white. Dimensions are actually not really that important to see all the time accurately, so I give it a nice darker gray. And for example, the windows, they're actually not too bad to see, so maybe kind of like something like this. Okay, and then I create another layer, and for example here, this one I call furniture. And for example, for furniture, let's say I give it a nice toned down green. Okay. Now we can close this one. Now to switch between different layers, you can simply go to here, click the layer. It always makes that layer you clicked the active layer. So this object, what we have, you see is actually on layer 0. And I would like to move it over to different layer. Now there are two ways how we can do this. I go to floor plan, double click, make it active. Select those two objects. Go to layers and say change to layer. And you see now they're on this layer. Let's prove it. You see they're red. Okay. So this is correct. Great. A different way, for example, would be select those objects, go to properties. I have to click on this triangle here, or press Ctrl 1. And not triangle, I mean the arrow. Go to the layer, triangle, and simply select what layer it should go to. Which is actually really nice. I can select multiple objects and then move them. Okay. Good. So this is, for example, now my room. And maybe just to be sure everything is correct, let's put down some dimensions. So I go to the dimension layer. And let's go to annotation, linear. And I click to this point, and for example, drag an annotation out. I can press spacebar, this point, drag it out. So you see the annotations right now are actually a little bit difficult to read. So maybe we should adjust first the visibility. To do this, we can go to here. Sorry, wrong one. Annotations. Okay, I have to switch to here. There's a manage dimension style. That's what I was looking for. Sorry. You can actually, because we're defining a style, also type in the style. Exactly the same. So with the dimension style manager, you basically define how lines look, how your text looks, how the text is placed. So for example, standard, we click on modify. Standard is the one I'm going to use for the moment. So let's set this one, for example, to architectural tick for the first and the second, and the arrows currently are 3/16 of an inch. Now to pick the correct size, it seems always to be a mystery. I would simply break it down to visibility. This room is 12 feet wide. If I have, for example, something that is 4 feet in terms of arrow size, I mean 4 inches, it's actually quite nice and readable. So this, for example, is a good size. Now if I want to print this one maybe in scale or to scale, that's all then subject to change. But honestly, it's all about readability. Then let's go to text. For example, the text, the numbers should be, let's say maybe 3 inches. And they should maybe be above the line, aligned with the vertical lines. Yeah, well, I can keep it this way at the moment. And our primary unit, for example, we also set to architecture. Maybe I would like to see also non-existing inches, so 0 inches. Click OK. Click close. And you see, well, 3 inches is okay, but maybe we would like to have this one a little bit bigger. So I change the text to maybe also 4 inches. And maybe I would like this one to 0.5 inches off the dimension line for the offset. Okay, those. Yeah. And now let's go back to here because, oops, click. Let's go to there. That should happen there. Interestingly, it got adjusted. Perfect. Now you see it's there. Okay, good. So let's go back to home, and you see actually if, for example, now I go to my floor plan and then, for example, turn the visibility of dimension off, they're gone. So you see layers can be really very useful for organizing all my different objects. Okay, at this point, let's go ahead and create some more information for my room. I have, for example, in the lower left corner, a small door. And let me show you different ways how, for example, we can create it. And specifically, we're going to use the snap tools really a lot. So from this corner to here, 13 inches, that is actually where my door starts. There are multiple ways how I could do this. One way, for example, would be I create a line, snap to here, and I would, for example, like to have intersection turned on. And you see where this X is, there it intersects, click and enter. There's now my line. This line, for example, I can move. I, for example, go to move, click this line, spacebar, click the reference point from where I would like to move from, click my mouse to the right, and for example then type in 13 inches. And it's really important that I really move my mouse to the right really horizontally, and you see this dotted line. That means I'm moving it along snap line, because if I click and I go to somewhere here, you see there's no dotted line. So I move it to the right and slightly down, but it should go straight to the right. Okay, 13 inches, enter, and there it is. Now the width of my door is 32 inches. I could draw another line and then move it, or I could actually simply copy this line. So I click copy, line, spacebar. From this point, make myself a copy 32 inches this direction. Escape. Perfect. There's now actually my door. I have up here a window. Window from this corner to here, 41 inches, 62 inches wide. Where on height-wise the window is positioned inside my floor plan, I can't really specify. That's something where we have to use the elevation view for. However, I can already in the top view mark where, for example, this window would be placed. So, for example, I could create myself now a new window by using a rectangle. And, for example, I click onto this corner. Click. See, this is the width. So, 62 inches. And now you see this rectangle is too short. It's not filling the whole wall. Not a big problem. I simply can click this object, move my mouse to this midline, grab, click, and for example, go to this endpoint, move my mouse straight back to the right, and it took. Okay, let's undo this one. We need another snap, for example. Let's try out perpendicular. Just for visibility purpose, I'm going to try to move this one down, and you see this is also slightly crooked. So here's a little trick. All those are turned off, besides endpoint I turned on, and I'm going to turn on orthographic. So now all I can do is move this line up and down, left or right, nothing else. So click, snap to this point, figures out the height. My mouse up and click. There it is. Perfect. Now this window has to be moved in 41 inches. So I can click move this object already selected from this point, this direction, just didn't do it. Okay, let's do it again. Our left mouse button, this direction, 41 inches. And this is actually a nice case about sometimes the snapping tools becoming really annoying. So one more time, I click my object, spacebar, I select from where, turn off the snapping. See, I'm still in orthographic, so it's very easy to just move it left and right. 41 inches, enter, there it is. So this is actually already a good point to mention that the snapping tools sometimes can really be tricky and impacting how your other tools are performing in AutoCAD. So easy fix sometimes. Turn them on when you need them, turn them off if you don't need them. I have another window here, also 62 inches, but 9 inches away from this corner. So this object is already made. I'm going to turn on my snap, turn on my midpoint, because I'm going to create midpoint to the midpoint, a line. Then I select the line, select this box. So you see I can just click on objects. With Shift I remove objects from the selection, simple left click adds, and then I click group, or I could type groups them together. Now this group, for example, I could copy. So maybe this case, this endpoint to this endpoint. Okay. Then I would like to rotate my object. So I click my object, spacebar, this point, and I move my mouse down. It goes right 90 degrees down because I have orthographic turned on. Click. Now my object is rotated. And let's move it. So object, spacebar, click down 9 inches. And there's the same problem again. So object, turn this one off, move it down, and then 9 inches. There it is. Okay, perfect. So you see, that was very easy to place those two windows actually. In here I have a small interior wall. So for example, the wall is 38 inches wide and then 28 inches long along this distance. We could use the poly tool. I go to somewhere. But I would like to snap right onto the wall. So I turn on, for example, nearest. Snap. Click this direction, 38 inches, enter, move my mouse straight down, 28 inches, enter, escape. So now this wall is a little bit floating in space. No problem. You can move it simply down. We go to move this object, spacebar, and actually now I would like to have endpoint turned on. So from this endpoint, then I turn endpoint off. Simply move it straight down and then snap onto this wall. Click. And you see? Perfectly fits. Now this interior wall has a wall thickness of maybe 5 inches. So offset 5 inches, enter, click, inside, click, and there's now my two objects. Now before I actually continue, I would like to show you something like this. I'm going to create a very basic wall out of a polyline, and then I'm going to add a line in between. Okay, so see, when with my mouse I can highlight two different objects. I go to offset and say 5 inches. Okay, you see they're not all perfectly offset at the same time together. I would have to trim those interior lines out, which is not really good. So whenever you have two different objects, select them and then, for example, click join. And then you will see here one segment joined into one polyline. So this is one object. And it offsets together perfectly. Okay, that for that. Now, when we are taking a look at this one, there are actually two ways how we can create or continue working on a floor plan. And this is actually already an important stage for pre-planning our three-dimensional model. Now, this is an exterior wall, and this is actually simple dry wood that was created inside. It's not really connected. So you have an option to either decide you would like everything to be one floor plan, so those lines here are gone, it's all joined, and then we can extrude it once. Or you could say, well, I would like to have this wall extruded and this wall extruded as single object. What's the advantage? You can turn off and on the ability of interior walls, and you can even delete them or move them around while maintaining your exterior walls. Most times when you do a redesign with the exterior walls, you can't do a lot, but you can work a lot with the interior space. So we're going to, in this case, simply patch in missing lines at those ends with the snapping for endpoints and escape. And then those lines, see, I click and click, 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 I join together into an interior wall. Okay. Now I have actually a small wall, a small door here, which is 24.5 feet wide. Oh, inches, not feet. Pretty big door. So I can create a rectangle. Click here. And for example, say 24.5 inches, tab, and 5 inches. Enter. There's my rectangle. Okay. And this one is, I think, perfectly centered. Now, how do we move this object to be centered onto this exterior wall? That's quite easy. We can actually use the midpoint snapping. So we go to move this object, spacebar, find the midpoint. And you see right now those objects overlap. So best practice, click, hold your mouse button and drag it away. And then let's do this again. Move, click, spacebar, midpoint, move it to orthographic movement off, view this midpoint. Click. There it is, perfectly centered. So I hope this, for example, so far nicely illustrated how we can actually quickly create like a very basic floor plan with those drawing tools. Let's take a look back at our dimensionings. For example, maybe I would like to add some more. Let's go back to annotations. So for example, I have points turned off. So for example, this to this. For example, I would like to see as a readout this one to this one. I can snap, you see, to the end lines of my annotations. Could also say you give me a here and give me a tangent there. And you see those lines are actually on the wrong layer, so I can select them all and then type in properties and say floor plan and switch it to dimensions. Perfect. Okay. So this was basically most that covered first steps. For example, now we should be able to create our visualization for the door. Currently we have those two lines, and we don't really know if there should be a door, what direction the door actually opens. So this is 32 inches wide, so we can create a rectangle. This point to there, and I think this is roughly, maybe, let's say 3 inches. And wrong thing. Okay, let's do this again. From this endpoint, click 32 inches, tab 3 inches, enter. There it is. Perfect. Now I have to rotate this one. I move it away. And for example, rotate. Click my object, spacebar, click this point, move my mouse straight up, or I could type in 90 plus minus based on what direction. Then I go to move, this one, spacebar, and this endpoint, snap to this endpoint. Great. Now I would like to have an arc for the door. So for example, I could go to start center endpoint. So start center endpoint, or hold Control key and left mouse button click, and then I created this arc the opposite direction. Okay, now you see actually that visually wise it doesn't look like you could walk through. The wall looks solid, so we have to cut this one open. We can use the trim tool. Trim works the way that you select all objects that somehow touch or overlap, and then you can press spacebar and simply click on what you would like to remove, and the software understands what elements to cut away. And then you can press escape. Those elements are separate, so I would like to make sure I selected them, and then I type in join. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Maybe up here we do actually the same, or for example we leave it. Actually in this case I'm going to leave it for a later demonstration. So right here I have actually a door that that can slide. It doesn't swing open, so we could visualize it the same way, or for example we could do maybe something interesting like this. So I'm going to create actually a point, just a rectangle like this. Okay, good. And then copy on spacebar and say from this point to this point. Okay, and then actually maybe two selected together. I say maybe from this midpoint to this midpoint. Okay, great. And actually let's see, let's rotate them a little bit so it looks like they are actually open. So yeah, this object, spacebar, and now we have to be a little bit precise. Let's say maybe 90 degrees, that's too much. Maybe 70 degrees. Okay, great. And then this object I'm going to move to there, and then rotate this object, this point. Probably -70. Yeah, great. So this essentially could maybe move open, but again, it's a sliding door. So for the moment, maybe let's leave it at this part. So this basically concludes everything, for example, for the floor plan. And maybe now we can take a look at how, for example, we can place in some furniture elements. So we can see the relationship between the volume of our space and the objects we put in. And actually, I don't really like how those look like. So to be quite honest, in this case, I'm simply bring it back this way. There. Great. So let's go to here. So I'm working on a table that is 32 inches wide and 63 inches long. So I can click somewhere and I see this one is my width, 32. Shoot, I pressed enter. I wanted to only press tab. So again, 32 inches, tab. 63 inches tall. Great. So this one maybe I can move, click and drag. Okay. And then here I have a steel case cabinet, which is 60 wide and 20 deep. So this is 60 inches, tab 20 inches, enter. And this one actually I would like to put this corner into this corner. So I will go ahead and say move this object, spacebar, this corner to this corner. Great. And maybe let's move this wall, not wall, this computer table actually really onto this wall. There, and it didn't snap. Because the snap stuff got confusing, so I turn all this off. Let's turn nearest on. Click spacebar. This one, spacebar. Here, maybe there. Good. There we are. And if I want to push it perfectly into the corner, one spacebar, click to there, click. There it is. Okay, so you saw actually this was really quite useful in terms of creating some of the spatial elements. So for example, let me go to for example this web page. Let's say I would like to have a nice furniture piece. And I just went to Target and recently walked by it, and I thought it's quite cubical. It might fit actually into the space. Besides what I found at Target I didn't really like, but I think that maybe for this exercise this might actually be interesting to take a look at. So here I have, for example, the dimension. So this is, for example, 28 high, 27.7 wide, and 22 deep. So I can take these numbers and, for example, create myself the drawing. So let's go back. 27.7 wide and 22 deep. So 27.7 inches, tab, 22 inches deep. So there's my seat. And there should actually also be an ottoman. So let's assume the ottoman is actually the same surface or something. So for example, this one we could copy and paste. Okay. Let's see if it's okay. Like to turn this one on, so copy and paste. And point and straight down. And now to distinguish, for example, what's what, you see this one has a backrest. On here I'm just simply creating myself a small backrest model, something like this. And then I could select those 3 elements and, for example, group them together. And then I move them, for example, to somewhere there. Now, the whole idea about furniture inside AutoCAD is simply really, they should be representational. They should not really be perfectly to scale with all the details. They should tell you something about where, for example, is something, because manufacturers will have the computer models to be placed into better programs like Revit. And also, as an interior designer, you don't need to rebuild those models. Or, I mean, of course, if you build your own furniture, that's something different. But for this function here, all we want to do is just communicate where what, for example, is. So, for example, I know what those green elements mean. Nobody else really understands. So, for example, I could go to here and then say, for example, let's go to text there, and for example, type in work table. Okay, it's pretty small. And let's maybe change the proportion of this one a little bit. We want to change this one. For example, the text has a scale. So, for example, from left, or I can scale it up. Let's go back. Bar. Oh, this, for example, was a little bit too big. So that's, for example, not necessarily really the easiest way how to do this. So, for example, we can maybe work also with the text here. So let's delete this one and let's see where are the text styles. Manage text styles. That was pretty much the same what we had here. So we can have different typefaces, height, let's say maybe 4 inches, high and close, and then, for example, type something again. So, workstation. See, this actually already works much better. Workstation. There. Let's say that's my cabinet. And for example, here, this is seat. So then maybe the no, maybe actually the text is good, but maybe we want to make it a little bit smaller. So maybe 3 inches. Could also, for example, make it italic, close. Here it's all set italic. So that's a nice thing about styles. You don't work on per object. You simply define a style, and then you change it. It's going to be updated for all objects. So this one, for example, maybe I rotate 90 degrees. Nope, wrong way. So rotate U, enter minus 90. Oops, I have to specify the point, of course, minus 90. And here, for example, try to enable this one so it fits. Now, of course, in this case, it's actually, yeah, I mean, ideally, you do not want to have elements to rotate into 2 different directions, everything horizontal, straight down, and I see this text is this way, so maybe here actually I go back and simply rotate it this way. Okay, and for example, I can place this one to here, maybe center it a little bit. You see, when you click on it, click and hold and wait, you get a preview of the text. It's going to be easier to be moved. Okay. So, could also, for example, maybe put in a leader. What's a leader? You can click to there, then say storage room. So go to annotate. Actually, see what standard, for example, we have for leader. So modify and text size. Here, for example, I could also say 4 inches. No, I think we're at 3 inches. And there, okay, good. Close. Okay, there it is. With the leader, you can, for example, change those positioning elements. You can click on this one and change it. So that's, for example, the way how you can work and then reposition, style your elements. Okay, I think this actually would conclude everything about the two-dimensional elements, giving you a rundown into how to use the styles, for example, for the annotations, for text, the leader, how, for example, to use some of the drawing tools, how to use the layers and the property tool, the group tool, the ungroup, and in general, like some of the ideas how to plan ahead and create your design structured onto different levels. So when, for example, we go into the three-dimensional module, we can easily turn elements on, off, and then based on those create our 3D object. Because in general, that's a nice thing about three-dimensional software or digital software in general. You can structure your design, and you can always, like you're working on transparent sheets, you can show information or remove information. It's all about your clarity.